Hello, everyone. We are just waiting a few more minutes for everyone to come on in, and then we will get the webinar started. Thanks so much for joining us. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are very excited for this webinar. Welcome to Building a Better America, a small business resource community. So a few things of housekeeping that we'd like to go over prior to beginning the webinar. If you have a question, please type it into the Q&A. And then the U.S. Small Business Administration does not endorse Public-Private Strategies Institute. This session is being live streamed and recorded, and we'll also make sure to be sending out an email following this webinar with more information regarding our presentation and where you can access a recording. Another thing we like to remind everyone of is to not share any personal information in the Q&A function. Thank you so much, and let's get started by introducing President of Public-Private Strategies Institute, Rhett Buttle.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this webinar today. And as many of you know who've joined us over the course of the last few months, this is a recurring series really focused on you, small business owners, community leaders, folks who are building the bedrock of our economy and society out in communities, really making sure that you have the tools and resources that you need every day to survive. And we are so proud to be able to partner with the U.S. Small Business Administration every 2 weeks to be able to bring you new tools and content to really help you make sense of what's going on with so many policies coming out of the Biden-Harris administration, really focused on helping small business owners around the country build back better. And that has been the focus of this series. Today, we are very fortunate to be able to drill down on a very significant piece of legislation, the bipartisan infrastructure law, which will create a massive investment in communities across the country. This has a huge opportunity to reinvigorate communities, to expand access to high-speed internet, to help build things like we know, like roads and bridges, but is also a huge opportunity for business owners of color and a huge opportunity to really make sure that we are infusing access to capital to communities across the country who for far too long have been forgotten. And what a great opportunity for business owners to be able to take advantage of that and to make sure that equity is infused in the conversation as we're being able to do so. Today, we have an amazing lineup of speakers. We're going to hear from your SBA administrator. We're going to hear from Ying McGuire, who leads the National Minority Supplier Development Council. And we'll also hear from the White House senior advisor on the bipartisan infrastructure law implementation, Mitch Landrieu. Some of you may remember that he was the mayor of Louisiana. So with that, we'll go ahead and we'll get started. And as always, it is our pleasure to welcome to this conversation Administrator Isabel Guzman, who, as many of you know, has been fighting and leading the charge. She's worked in several administrations at the SBA. There's no one better to be at the helm. She's been a huge fighter for small business owners, for entrepreneurs, and has been waking up every day. And I see it. She's traveling all across the country to meet with small business owners, to hear from you all, and to make sure that that work is reflected here in Washington, D.C. So with that, Administrator, thank you as always for being here. And it's my pleasure to turn the conversation over to you.
Thank you so much, Red. I mean, you really define great partnership for us at SBA. Really appreciate anytime I can kick off these sessions that we do in partnership for our small businesses. And I also appreciate the great work that you're doing. I've heard about the recent launch of Build Up Local that you partnered with Ying McGuire, who's on today within MSDC, but also Urban League, to really help spread the word about the opportunities in the bipartisan infrastructure law. Thank you so much. And I know you're going to have Mitch Landrieu on a little bit later. Just want you all to know that it's such an important conversation right now, and he is a great champion for small businesses, especially in this infrastructure space he's leading. As you know, he's a former mayor. He knows the value of small businesses to the economy, and so that value is being seen across his work in infrastructure. So this is a great session today. You know, I'm really motivated by today's turnout because we need America's small businesses to help us rebuild our infrastructure. I want to, repurpose the old Uncle Sam poster sometimes to repurpose it for "We need you, small business owners," because the reality is that our small businesses are really essential to our global economic leadership and our ability to rebuild an economy that works for everyone, as the president says, from the bottom up and the middle out. And that's the power of the SBA, as its programs help small businesses get into government contracting and get the capital that they need to succeed. That's why the SBA was founded almost 70 years ago next year, to promote small businesses as the single most impactful way to drive competition and innovation in our economy and strengthen our industrial base. And that's the core, really, of the president's economic agenda as well, making critical investments in our infrastructure, manufacturing centers, innovation, R&D, clean energy economy, so that we can build back our competitive edge, innovating to lead globally again. To do that, though, we do need you, all of our small businesses, to work with the government to literally rebuild our nation's roads, bridges, ports, broadband, water systems, airports, and EV charging stations. Like Heather Avila, who I met from Live Electric in Las Vegas, Nevada. She's a woman-owned small business working to pivot her business to now install, repair, and maintain those EV charging stations that are being put up. Or the small business owners I met with Governor Lamont in Connecticut at the Wyndham Bridge construction site, which had some great small business contractors, including Martinez Couch and Associates, a graduate of our 8A program at the SBA, who's providing critical civil engineering services on projects. Infrastructure and those projects, like the ones I've mentioned, really keep commerce flowing and support supply chains. Our small businesses especially depend on our transit systems and broadband systems nowadays to get their goods and connect with customers and ship their products. It's an investment in reducing costs and in making our economy more resilient and ready for future disruptions like that we experienced under COVID. Which is why I'm so honored to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of President Biden's signing of the bipartisan infrastructure law with all of you small businesses who will deliver it and benefit from it. At the SBA, our job is to help clear the way and make it as easy as possible for you to join this rebuilding, help you get that contract and the related capital and bonding and technical assistance so you can deliver against the requirements. I mentioned Heather Avila earlier from Live Electric. She's leveraged our capital programs to try to get capital ready and start positioning her business for success, our Emerging Leaders program. And she references that those tools she gets from the SBA are what help drive her business every day. She's referencing back and staying engaged. Every small business contractor working on that Wyndham Bridge project in Connecticut I mentioned actually received SBA support. That's how they're positioning their business for success. And at the SBA, we're putting America's small businesses at the forefront so you can bid on and win those contracts, and so that you can be part of these critical system infrastructure builds. Over the last 10 years in contracting, we've seen enormous trends. President Biden has been clear that he wants to challenge us all to use the power of the federal spend to deliver this rebuilding and deliver all of the contracts in the federal government so that the economy can work for our small business contractors. We're setting the standard for our state and local partners by working hard to ensure that small businesses have opportunities to compete in all of our federal contracting, which is a $500 billion set of opportunities annually. We had a record year in fiscal 21 and saw record spends with over 150 billion in small business contracts and over 70 billion in subcontracts. And we also hit our small disadvantaged business goal of 11% a year earlier, well on our way to President Biden's goal of 15% to small disadvantaged businesses by 2025. and all that is great progress, but we know we have a long road to overcome some of those historic trends. As our industrial base, our small business contractors doing business with the federal government has declined over the last 10 years by 40%. And we see disparities persist with Black and Latino owned businesses, for example, at their lowest point in the decade, which is a 9.5 billion drop. And the new entrants are declining as well, 60% decline in new entrants, people who are new to contracting. We have to reverse those trends, which is why I say we need you to help us do that and grow our economy. And the Biden-Harris administration has already taken significant steps. First of all, we want that entry point to be easier. So we've prioritized a more simplified process for certification, improving technology for a better customer experience when you go to get your women-owned small business certification or your veteran certifications, or as well your contracting, HubZone, et cetera. And we're also implementing regulatory reforms to make those changes clear and simplified. And the second thing we have to do, and President Biden's made this clear, is we have to expand the number of contract opportunities for all our small businesses to bid on. More money is going out the door, but less contracts due to bundling and schedules. The president committed bold contracting goals that I mentioned earlier, but his message is to agencies to step up, to expand opportunities for small businesses. And working with the White House, we've removed barriers like category management, which is the way the government strategically sources, which had a bias towards large businesses and valuing that, instead we want to value that small businesses can foster innovation and competition and can help us achieve our missions. We are measuring what we value and tracking new entrants and disaggregated data by race and industry. And we're assessing our procurement leaders against these goals and their performance to make sure that we can revitalize small business contracting and attract you all back into this space. And we are going to continue to do more to open up those schedules and create more opportunities for our small businesses, because we're here to fight for you. And we have experts across the SBA in our field offices who spend their entire day looking to match our small businesses with contract opportunities on the horizon. Our business opportunity specialists, our procurement center representatives who know those contracts coming down the pike, and our commercial market representatives who focus on subcontracting opportunities. We're mobilizing them to better serve our small businesses. And while we're just getting started, just know that we are committed to making sure that small businesses start to sell their products and service to the world's largest buyer, the US government. And we want you to also have the capital that it's going to take after you get that golden ticket of a contract. So we've expanded one of our critical capital programs called Community Advantage that uses mission lenders to get our SBA funding, which totals over $35 billion a year, out to you all. And we're advancing regulations to try to simplify that process for our lending network and for you, ultimately, the small businesses. We want to continue to serve at the level and the scale that we did during the COVID relief programs, and are fighting hard to make sure that happens every day at the SBA. And it's not just in our lending program, it's in our investment programs. We just partnered with Department of Transportation, of course, with a big role in infrastructure to try to expand our investment in small businesses in this space. When I was in Washington recently with Governor Inslee, Washington State, and there was a bridge revitalization project happening, Montlake Project, I met with a woman-owned small business named Patricia Cleary. She has a firm that focuses on diving, really incredible work where they go underground to cut casings and do demolition work underwater, super technical. But thanks to her work and the many other small businesses working on that project, the Montlake community is going to be reconnected, which will help the local moms and pops around the space with better traffic flow. And they're also, every day, creating those good paying jobs and supporting more local small businesses with their work and infrastructure. That's why this work is so important, and we want to make sure that you're engaged and involved. And Patricia's story is being replicated all across America thanks to President Biden's infrastructure investments. Already nearly 7,000 specific projects across more than 4,000 communities are taking place across all 50 states, DC and the territories, so where you're at. And that's the kind of opportunity we're trying to bring into your reach with programs like this and with the services at the SBA. So I'm excited to see this conversation happening, to see you all engaged, because again, we all need you to come back into contracting and help us to deliver against our missions and rebuild America's infrastructure. Thanks so much for being here and for the great work that you're putting in to make that happen.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Administrator, for creating the time. I know it's a crazy week, so I think we're going to let you go on to the next thing. But thank you for being here. Look forward to having you back before the end of the series. And with that, it's my pleasure to turn the conversation over to someone a little over a year ago. I had coffee with at a conference just as she was taking the helm of National Minority Supplier Development Council, and what an amazing year it's been to see Ying grow and the amazing leadership that she's brought to this important institution, which is really fighting to grow and make sure that there's equity and real growth for business owners of color across our country. So with that, it's my pleasure to turn the conversation over to President and CEO of NMSDC, Ying McGuire. Ying, over to you.
Thank you, Red, for the kind introduction. You and the PPS has been a great partner of NMSDC and help us drive progress on policy agenda around access to opportunities for MBEs, access to capital, and advocating for a MBE designation at the federal level. Thank you very much. And good morning. My name is Ying McGuire, and I'm the CEO and the president of the National Minority Supplier Development Council, also known as NMSDC. Very honored to share this virtual panel with two incredible leaders, not just one, Administrator Guzman and a Senior Advisor Landra later. And I want to thank Administrator Guzman for her support and attendance at the NMSDC conference and exchange in New Orleans. Just happened 2 weeks ago. We had a 5,000 attendees, and everybody walked away with actions to drive wealth creation in the community of color through entrepreneurship. So let me share with you, I was scanning through the name of attendees this morning, and since many of you are probably the first time hearing from me, so I want to take a minute to share with you a little bit about NMSDC. So NMSDC was established in 1972 as a direct result of President Nixon's executive order to address racial equity. And it is the longest operating business growth engine for the broadest group of systemically excluded communities of color: Asian, Black, Hispanic, and Native American. And our impact really goes far beyond purchasing and procurement. It is about upward mobility for the emerging majority of Americans, a really equal shot at participating in the American experiment of a free market and entrepreneurship. Our network's vast. We have a head office in New York, but we also have 23 regional councils serving across the United States, a CDFI arm called NMSDC Business Consortium Fund for access to capital, 5 international partners for your global expansion, and extensive NGO and government partners like PPS and SBA. Our success is historic, with over 15,000 NMSDC certified MBEs connected to more than 1,500 corporate members and resulting in over $396 billion in economic output annually, and sustaining about 1.75 million jobs and 122 billion in wages earned. And I'm very pleased to share with you that the average employee composition at our certified MBEs is 70% of minority employees, people of color. And we're all about correcting the unequal access to wealth building opportunities through 4 pillars of excellence. Number 1 is we advocate for MBE with the policymakers and with the corporations, the buy entities. We certify. So we create the gold standard certification 50 years ago. And we develop MBEs, make sure that they're they can increase their capacity and get ready to address large contracts. And we connect them to relationships and capital and opportunities and the resources. And I want to give a shout out to our MBEs and the corporate members on the Zoom call today. So if you are NMSDC certified MBEs, our corporate members, our team member, or regional council team member, putting the chat, say, go NMSDC. Let's get some engagement going. I want to see who's here today with us. And I was monitoring some of the questions. I saw a question from Anthony Knight from Unique Electrical Concept and Design. His question is, your hand tool manufacturer, how do I get into the mainstream market without people judging me by my color? And Anthony, I want to invite you to have a conversation with me. So please leave your contact information with PPS, the host of this webinar, and we'll schedule a call with you and to help you figure out how we can help you get to the mainstream markets. Thank you for the great question. So as you know, people in this country and around the world lived through a very tough time in the past few years. And Administrator Guzman alluded that the Black and Latino businesses actually got worse off. We recently did the economic impact study. And for NMSDC certified MBEs, we actually saw a 22% increase in total revenue at MBE certified by NMSDC. And the US jobs at this MBE certified by NMSDC increased by 64%, and the wages earned by US employees at MBE certified by NMSDC increased by 126%. So our model works, but the question is, are we moving the needle enough towards economic equity? And so if we are, then why is the white households 8 times wealthier than Black households and 5 times wealthier than Hispanic households? And why has the racial wealth gap increased by 70% since the pandemic started? So that tells us we have a lot of work to do, and we cannot do the same thing hoping for different results. So at NMSDC, we're celebrating 50-year anniversary. We have set an aspirational goal to reach $1 trillion in annual revenue for NMSDC certified MBEs. Today is $260 billion. So we have to quadruple it in the next few years. And to accelerate the wealth creation in the communities of color. And we're very, very honored to be here today to celebrate this important role of business owner of color and celebration the 1-year anniversary of President Biden signing the bipartisan infrastructure law, which serves as a catalyst to further the administration's pledge that minority-owned businesses will be prioritized for federal contracting opportunities and will not be left behind as infrastructure projects unfold across the country. And I was at the White House when the CHIPS Act was signed into the law. And I heard directly that at that moment, that President Biden told the large chip manufacturers like Intel and AMD and Micron, and said, this is not, the incentive is not free money, that you need to do business with small and minority-owned businesses. So that is the pledge from the administration. And our role is to make sure to work with you to materialize that opportunities. And so since the beginning of this term, the Biden-Harris administration made several very specific commitments to minorities to decrease the racial wealth gap. And you heard about the 15% of all federal contracts need to go to small disadvantaged businesses by 2025. And you also probably have seen that for the first time, SBA released disaggregated racial and ethnicity data on small business contracting and a pledge to make improvements to the category management system, just to name a few. And so these efforts are welcomed and celebrated, especially as we learn that the racial wealth gap continues to be a driver for change and a policy priority among business owners. Additionally, the bipartisan infrastructure law made the Minority Business Development Agency is a permanent part of the federal government and expanded their budget to over 100 million and included provisions to break up large infrastructure projects into smaller contract deals so that we can allow minority-owned businesses and the contractors to make bids on these projects to ensure greater racial equity. And we're very excited about the appointment of Undersecretary Don Cravens, who's an incredible leader and a partner. And 2 weeks ago, we signed an MOU with MBDA to accelerate MBE growth and wealth creation in communities of color through entrepreneurship and government contracting. Finally, as hundreds of billions of dollars go out to the communities all over the country, there is historic opportunities for business of colors and contractors. It's a really imperative for the administration, NGOs, civil rights group, business organizations such as ours, that the opportunities are shared and make sure we drive the equity in the process. And that is why I'm very delighted that NMSDC has partnered with a very known civil rights group, the National Urban League, and Public-Private Strategy Institute, the RADS team, together to launch this Build Up Local that Administrator Guzman mentioned. And really, we aim to make it a one-stop shop for business owners in the communities of color to learn about all the resources, opportunities, and programs made available through the bipartisan infrastructure law. Of course, this is a phased approach. We're going to get some basic information on the website, and we look forward to your feedback, what kind of information you're looking for, so we can continuously improve the information on that website, so that can be your one-stop shop. So in the coming weeks and months, more resources will be added to Build Up Local.org to help business owners of color really understand the bipartisan infrastructure law and provide information about how to access related contracting opportunities. As you know, all these dollars, most of dollars are flowing to state local governments. And so we encourage all of our attendees today to go to builduplocal.org to sign up for updates and help us spread the word on social media using the hashtag BuildUpLocal. And folks, you know, we are at a pivotal moment in time. I'm talking about the racial wealth gap has increased, and the federal government is injecting unprecedented funding. And if we don't leverage this funding to build up the MBE's capability and allow them to participate in these contracting opportunities and leverage this opportunity to close the racial wealth gap, we will not be able to catch up. It is imperative that we all need to seize the moment and take bold action for the future of our country and our economy. And as I shared with you, NMSDC celebrated its 50th anniversary a couple of weeks ago in New Orleans, and we have aspirational goal to achieve $1 trillion in annual revenue for NMSDC certified MBE. So if you're not certified, come certify with us. We're in the process modernize our certification to make it easier and simpler, faster, without compromise our gold standard. And so I encourage all of you join our community, and I encourage all of you participating in our march to 1 trillion so that we can accelerate the growth of minority-owned businesses, so we can end the racial wealth gap once and for all. And thank you so much for listening. And I saw another question from Mr. Torres about how minority law firm can participate. And I want to tell you that infrastructure opportunity is not just about construction. there's so much professional services work, like designing work, engineering work, law firm work. So I encourage you to find our regional counsel in your region, get certified and get involved with them, and to figure out how you can have that opportunity to participate. With that, thank you. Have the great rest of webinar. Thank you, Rep. Get back to you.
Thank you so much, Ying. And now we're going to move on to our educational presentation. And so it's my pleasure to hand the conversation over to Renee Johnson. Renee, over to you.
Thank you so much, Rhett. If we can pull up the slide deck so that we can continue on with the educational resources. And so we're going to talk about the Inflation Reduction Act, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, and the American Rescue Plan and Made in America. And then just give you guys a little update on COVID-19 and what you could do as a small business leader. So the Inflation Reduction Act was signed into law by President Biden on August 16, 2022. And it focuses on lowering the cost for small businesses and working families by making healthcare more affordable, leveling the tax playing field for small businesses versus large corporations, and then reducing the deficit while also combating the climate crisis. Let's talk a little bit more about some of these. So the Inflation Reduction Act is really about the tax portion that we were just talking about as some of the bullet points and how it impacts small businesses. The IRA will not raise taxes on the vast majority of small businesses or working families. This law is funded in a way by personal tax increases on small businesses or working families making under $400,000, which is roughly 98% of all Americans. So the majority of you are on this call. We want to make sure that you are not going to be targeted, right? This is not to impact you in a negative way. The IRA doubles the refundable research and development tax credit for small businesses, raising it from $250,000 to $500,000. And this credit can be applied against payroll taxes and a wide variety of expenses, including product development and technology. It also increased funding for the IRS, which again, I just want to refocus this, and hone on this point, will not be used to target small businesses or working families, which is about 98% of all Americans, which we said again. The IRS will be able to upgrade their processes and focus on areas of challenges for the agency, such as large corporate and global high net worth taxpayers, pass-through entities, and multinational taxpayers. Again, the IRS has made a promise that the investments of these enforcement resources will be designed around the Department of Treasury's directive that will not impact small businesses under that $400,000 amount. And again, that's roughly about 98% of all Americans. Let's go on to the next slide. And now we're going to talk about the healthcare. The IRA will make prescription drugs more affordable without hurting innovation. In a recent survey by Small Business for America's Future, found that more than 80% of small business owners support allowing Medicare to negotiate prescription drug prices and capping out-of-pocket costs for seniors at $2,000 and ensuring Affordable Care Act premiums are affordable for families and their businesses. Additionally, the IRA will provide a 3-year extension, which is going to go through 2025, of enhanced subsidies for small business owners who are buying their own healthcare coverage on the Affordable Care marketplaces. Additionally, it extends temporary subsidies, preventing out-of-pocket premium payments from rising, and that's going to impact virtually all 13 million subsidized enrollees. The marketplace subsidies are still in place when the Medicaid maintenance of eligibility, or the MOE that some of you know about, ends. And many people will disenroll from Medicaid, could not find similarly low-cost coverages on the ACA marketplaces. And again, this allows Medicare to start negotiating the price of some prescription drug prices beginning in the year 2026 and caps Medicare Part D out-of-pocket costs in 2025. And I know this is a lot of information, but don't worry, we will make sure that you guys get a copy of this as you have registered for this webinar. So you will have a copy of the slide deck and video for your resources. Now let's talk about the bipartisan infrastructure law. On November 15, 2021, President Biden signed the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act into law. And as you heard today, we are celebrating the 1-year signing of this law. This is a historic investment of $550 billion in new funds for large infrastructure projects, supply chains, broadband, and drinking water. This is the largest, as everyone has said before, investment in the nation's infrastructure since 1956. This means that $55 billion in projects to deliver clean water, $65 billion to expand the country's broadband, which I know most of us are excited about because, hi, we're on a webinar, and then $110 billion to repair and rebuild the country's crumbling roads, and $90 billion in modernizing public transportation. Now you're wondering, how does this impact small businesses? Well, this law will touch virtually every part of mainstream economy. The law will expand access to tens of billions of dollars to federal, state, and local government contracts. For instance, the U.S. Department of Transportation is to award more than $37 billion in federal contracts. This is to support an estimated 700,000 jobs per year. It's going to help small businesses hire new employees and reach new customers, and also foster the development of Main Street small businesses and underserved communities. And to learn more about the infrastructure project and how contracts are rolling out by the administration, you can go to the guidebook, which is build.gov. The American Rescue Plan. In 2021, Congress passed the American Rescue Plan, which is also known as ARP, and CARES Act. These were focused on helping small businesses and their consumers. Support communities that were struggling in the wake of COVID-19. The plan provided critical support to those communities. It provided emergency grants, lending, and investment to hard-hit small businesses so that they can rehire and retain workers, and distributed more than $360 billion in emergency funding throughout the country, and that was to state, local, territorial, and tribal governments. It helped hard-hit public transit agencies avoid layoffs and service reductions, which disproportionately harm workers who are more likely to be dependent on public transportation. Next slide. Another thing that came out of the American Rescue Plan was the Community Navigator pilot program at the SBA. This was designed to reduce barriers that underrepresented and underserved entrepreneurs often face in accessing the program, and how they can use this to recover, grow, or start their businesses. It's a total of $100 million in funding that went to 51 organizations across the country. Selected projects will cover diverse communities throughout the U.S. and Puerto Rico. The grantees who received funding were served as hubs. And then centralized lead organizations were considered spoke organizations that have the built-in trust in their local communities, and they're able to connect small businesses to critical resources, assistance, which include financial assistance and access to capital, contracting and procurement, marketing operations, business development, and exporting for those who would like to do so. Let's go to the next slide. The tax incentive. So the paid family leave tax incentive. Under this program, employers can offer up to 12 weeks of paid family leave. And this leave can be used for an array of issues. And it could be used for taking care of a family member, a maternity or paternity leave with biological or adopted children. In exchange for offering the leave, employers receive as much as 25% tax credit for the amount of wages replaced. This policy is targeted explicitly to hourly employees who would not otherwise have access to paid family leave. Employees who participate cannot make more than $72,000 per year. And you should definitely check with your tax professionals to make sure that this program works best for your business. Now, Made in America. This program is to ensure the future is made in America by all American workers. And it was launched a whole of government initiative to strengthen the use of federal procurement to support American manufacturing. to continue building on these implementation efforts and ensuring these ambitious goals aren't just talked about, but are actionable, the executive order established the creation of the Made in America office within the White House Office of Management and Budget. The Made in America office works to implement federal procurement and financial management policy to help carry out the president's vision of a future made in America of all products by American workers, including minority entrepreneurs and small businesses in every region in our country. And to find out more information about this program, you could go to madeinamerica.gov. Now we're going to talk about how you can become a COVID-19 vaccination small business leader. So many of you have probably already got vaccinated and boosted, and that is amazing. So if you are already vaccinated and boosted, encourage your employees, family, friends, and neighbors to do it as well. You should create a vaccination plan for your business, review state or local vaccine policies, or seek legal advice. Consider incentives such as the new paid tax credit that we talked about for employees to get the shot, and so that they can have time to recover if in fact they do have any side effects. Whether you encourage, incentivize, mandate vaccines, communicate that plan to your employees, both in writing and verbally. We want you to also continue to follow the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, guidance on wearing masks and social distancing, even after all your employees are vaccinated. And then, of course, you can check out these resources, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which has a toolkit that you'll be able to access after this webinar when we send this out to you, as well as the campaign resources and toolkits called We Can Do This by the healthandhumanservices.gov. To learn more information about this and COVID and everything else and stay up to date, you can go to whitehouse.gov/COVID-land. And with that, we are excited to say that we have upcoming webinars. The next one will be on Wednesday, December 7th, where we're going to talk about coronavirus and have an update for you, and you're able to register for that webinar. And then on December 21st, we're going to be winding down 2022 and looking ahead to 2023. And what does that actually mean for your business? So stay tuned, register, and we will see you on December 7th and the 21st. If you have any SBA related questions, please feel free to go to answerdesk@sba.gov. And if you have any questions about a copy of this webinar, please feel free to email events@publicprivatestrategies.com. And also please note that this is also being live streamed to Facebook pages, the U.S. Small Business Administration, as well as Public-Private Strategies Institute. And you're able to review it anytime on those pages. And with that, we thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar.